take a quick survey first. How many of you have actually purchased from Zappos before? Oh, wow. Very cool. So normally when I do this survey, the ratio is actually about 2 to 1 women to men. And a lot of guys I ask say they haven't personally purchased from us, but their wives or significant others have, and actually a lot of times it's on their behalf. And I was giving a tour to an executive from one of the major record labels. And we're actually based, for those of you who may not know, we're actually based out of Las Vegas. Right now we're located in a suburb of Las Vegas called Henderson. And we offer tours to the public, so anytime any of you are in Vegas, definitely recommend coming for a tour. We'll pick you up from the airport in a Zappos shuttle, give you a tour, it takes about an hour, and then drop you off at your hotel afterwards. And so as I was giving this tour to this executive, I asked him if he had bought from us before, and he said no, he hadn't personally bought from us, but he suspected his wife had, because these white boxes would show up on his doorstep and then they disappear and he'd have no idea what was going on. And every time he asked her if she was buying, exchanging, or returning, she would just flat out refuse to answer him and change the subject. So right now we're spread amongst 3 different buildings in Henderson, and we're actually about 4 months away from relocating our headquarters to downtown Vegas, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But in the building I'm in, that's where the merchandising department sits, and we go tour that, and then we go upstairs to our call center. And there's actually a whiteboard there that you'll see when you come for the tour, and we list all the different stats, like percent of phone calls we answered in 20 seconds or less, number of phone calls we took yesterday, sales through the call center, and so on. And as I'm explaining through these different stats, I turn around and he's disappeared. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. So I backtrack looking for him, and then finally find him. Turns out he had gone halfway down one of our aisles, sat down next to one of our customer service reps, and forced her to pull up his wife's account. And he discovered that she had spent over $62,000 in her lifetime. So hopefully we weren't instrumental to any divorce proceedings or anything. Anyways, and so this is a picture actually of the building that I'm in Henderson. And it was actually about 2 years ago that we announced, we found out that the city of Las Vegas was actually building a new city hall and abandoning the former city hall. And we announced that actually that was going to be our new headquarters. We're going to take over the new city hall, and this is a picture of our campus that we're going to be moving into in 4 months. And it's actually in downtown Vegas and in an area that actually most tourists don't know about, called Fremont East. And that's actually the area that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But as we realized we could finally get everyone under one roof, for us, company culture is the #1 priority at Zappos, and our whole belief is that if we get the culture right, then most of the other stuff like delivering great service or building a long-term enduring brand or business will just be a natural byproduct of that. And so right now, because we're spread amongst 3 different buildings, a lot of people in the top building never see the people at the bottom building. And so super excited about finally getting everyone under one roof. And so we started asking our employees, what do you want in your dream campus? And actually went and toured campuses like Nike and Google and Apple that have these amazing campuses. If you've ever been to the Nike campus, one of the buildings has this running track around it. And there's another building that has an on-site pub. And we thought to ourselves, we need one of those. And then, and actually there's jail cells in the city hall that we're moving into. So we're actually talking about turning it into a speakeasy bar and calling it just bars. And then, and so we surveyed our employees and asked them, what do you want in your dream campus? And they told us on-site gym, on-site pub, and so on. But the #1 request we got from our employees was actually doggy daycare. More than human daycare. And so as we started thinking about this more, we realized we couldn't possibly fit all of these things into a single building. And so we started thinking, okay, all those other campuses were great for employees, Nike, Apple, Google, but they're actually really insular and don't really integrate or contribute to the community around them. And so we thought, okay, maybe instead of doing our original plan, let's turn it inside out and take an approach that's more like NYU, where the city kind of blends in with the campus and you don't really know where one begins and the other ends. And so that's really, and so that was the plan. And then also by coincidence, within 2 blocks of where our campus, there's this area called Fremont East, because most people, when they think of Vegas, they think of the Strip, which actually turns out is technically not even in the city of Las Vegas. Or if they know anything about downtown, it's the overhead light show and the old casinos. But there's this area called Fremont East where you would actually have no idea you're in Vegas. It's actually, if anything, the anti-Strip. And if you go into any of the bars or coffee shops, and there's some images that you can kind of see here, there's no gaming, and it's actually the most community-focused place I've ever lived. And I've never lived in a place, and I grew up in San Francisco, but I've never lived in a place where the bar owners hang out in each other's bars just to support each other. And so it was this magical coincidence that it was just 2 blocks from our future campus. And so separately, myself and a couple other individuals formed a company called Downtown Project. No outside investors, and so we can really take a long-term approach, and it has a $350 million budget, and there's a few different goals for a downtown project. One is to help create a place where you have everything you need to live, work, play within walking distance, to help create a sense of neighborhood and community. And another is to make downtown Vegas the most community-focused large city in the world, and probably the place you would least expect it. The third is to make it the co-learning and co-working capital of the world, not just in tech, but also in photography and culinary and arts and so on. And our whole philosophy is actually, rather than take kind of the normal real estate redevelopment approach of focusing on maximizing ROI or short-term cash flow needs, we have this concept of maximizing the long-term ROC, return on community. And then there's also this other acronym that we use, ROL, return on luck, and actually thinking about how do you get companies and people to actually be luckier and have more serendipitous encounters. And it sounds really strange to think that you can actually engineer or architect luck in an environment, but I'm actually going to talk about that, and we've actually been seeing that happen a lot by really thinking about how do you get people to collide with each other. You know, the research has shown that most innovation actually comes from something outside your industry being applied to your own. And what's happening in downtown Vegas is it's people from tech, people from music and arts and culinary and manufacturing and writing and all these different groups coming together, having conversations and sharing ideas with each other. And then we're seeing just a lot of serendipity happen, and we really use the term accelerating serendipity quite a bit in downtown Vegas. And so we have something we refer to as the 3 Cs: collisions, community, and co-learning. And the bet is by focusing all of our investments through this filter of the 3 Cs, that it's going to lead to not only a happier and luckier community and city, but actually innovation and productivity increases. And so quick breakdown of how the budget is being broken up. We have $50 million that's being invested into small businesses to help build a sense of neighborhood and community. It's kind of hard to see in the sun right here, but this is actually a Post-it note wall, because we're actually very anti-top-down master planning. And instead, we have a tour that goes through my apartment actually several times a day, and we just ask people, what do you want in your dream neighborhood? And if it's not already on the wall, then we encourage people to write it down on a Post-it note, put it on the wall, and then it's something that we'll consider investing in. The other really cool thing is every once in a while we get someone whose lifelong dream is to retire 10 years from now and, say, start a cupcake bakery. And we tell them, well, rather than wait 10 years, let's just do it now. Start living your dream now, and we'll invest in you. And that's been a pretty exciting thing. And so we have a few different criteria. We want them to be owner-operated. They need to be super passionate about it. It needs to help build community. Unique, first or best is really important to us. We've had a lot of people say, oh, I've seen this great chain in 8 other cities, and you should open one up in downtown Vegas. And we actually say no to those because we don't want to be the 8th or 9th of something. We want our own unique identity, and it needs to be story-worthy. So this is a photo of Natalie. She actually had worked at the Hard Rock Casino in Vegas for the last 10 years as a chef in their 24/7 cafe. And randomly met her serendipitously in the local coffee shop. And turns out she was actually getting sick of working in the casino and was actually packing up her bags and heading back to Santa Fe. And it turns out through conversation, we found out that her lifelong dream was to open up a breakfast and lunch place. And so over the course of a few months, started talking, and she was one of the first small businesses that we funded. And then this is actually her place under construction. And she opened up about 5 or 6 months ago, and is actually doing double, actually almost triple her original projections. And so not only has it been a great investment from a financial perspective, but it's just been really exciting being part of helping accelerate people's dreams. This is a check cashing place. It was still a check cashing place last July, and this is what it looked like on the inside. And then this is Sarah, whose lifelong dream was to open up a boutique clothing store. And so that was another business that we funded, and now she actually describes her store as a hangout place that happens to sell clothing. It's become a new daytime gathering spot for the community. We're also opening up a shipping container yard later this fall, and over there's actually an immersion dome where you can navigate the universe. There's a 40-foot praying mantis that we got from Burning Man that shoots out 12-foot flames. All sorts of different food and beverage options around and different retail. And then actually in the middle, there's a kids' play area where there's going to be a 25-foot Swiss Family Robinson type of treehouse for kids and these giant Lego blocks and so on. We're doing bike sharing. We actually announced a few weeks ago that we just placed an order for 100 Teslas to actually launch a car sharing program that's based on Teslas in downtown Vegas, as well as a program that will pick you up in a Tesla if you don't want to drive yourself. And so focus a lot on urban connectivity. $50 million is being invested into tech companies. And this has actually been the most surprising part of everything that we've been doing, because the tech scene was non-existent in downtown Vegas, or anywhere in Vegas actually, 2 years ago. And then we funded the build out of a tech library, and it's kind of like a casual co-working space. And in the past year, 20 different tech companies have relocated from other states and even other countries to downtown Vegas to be part of this. And there's, I think by the end of this year, the number is actually going to be closer to probably 100. And so that's been really exciting to go from zero to all these tech companies moving in. And several of them have actually gotten additional funding from Bay Area venture capitalists. And so when we ask people, these startups, why are you moving to downtown Vegas? They say it's for two reasons. One is because of the sense of community that's there. And the other is because it's really this idea of thinking of the city as a startup and being able to be a part of that. And how many opportunities in a lifetime do you have where you can help shape the future of a major city? And we're also partnering with Venture for America, which is like Teach for America, but for college graduates that want to become entrepreneurs. We're partnering with Teach for America. They're relocating their Vegas headquarters to downtown to really add to that sense of energy and entrepreneurship vibe down there. And we're opening up an early childhood center that is initially focused on 6 weeks through kindergarten, but will, over the next few years, expand through K through 12. That's focused on teaching kids creativity, entrepreneurship, and incorporating the latest research from neuroscience into the whole curriculum. We took over an arts and music festival called First Friday, and that draws normally 20 to 25,000 people on the first Friday of every month, and partnered with the founders of Burning Man to actually have the first urban burn. It was a burning woman, and in addition to that, we're also bringing large-scale art. This is from Burning Man. This is a 45-foot tall thing that's been at Burning Man and Coachella and so on. And the whole idea is by bringing large-scale art to downtown Vegas, you increase the walkability, get people to walk a couple more blocks. This is actually a great book I would definitely recommend for anyone that, even if you're not interested in urban development. It's called Triumph of the City, and it's written by a Harvard economics professor that researched cities from all different time periods, Rome, New York, Detroit, and looked at why some thrived and some didn't. And a lot of actually his findings are driving our philosophies about a new way to actually help revitalize and transform our city. One of the really interesting stats about cities is that every time the size of a city doubles, productivity or innovation per resident increases by 15%. But when companies get bigger, productivity per employee generally goes down. So part of the reason why we're so interested from the Zappos perspective is we want to avoid that fate. And we want to actually attempt something that's never been done at this scale before, trying to create this weird hybrid between corporation, community, and city that will actually drive productivity and innovation increases for Zappos as well as for the city, and have it all and create this positive feedback loop. And the ingredients for that to happen there's three things, and this was in the book when we first started this project. This was kind of our playlist. We need a residential density of 100 residents per acre, combined with street level activity for those residents to collide in. So all those post-it notes, the coffee shop, the bars, and so on. And then the third ingredient is actually, I think, the hardest. It's also the cheapest, and it's also the one that I think you get the most leverage out of. It's a culture of openness, sharing, and collaboration. And I think of it as kind of a multiplier, because if people are twice as likely to talk to each other, then maybe you only need half the residential density. So when we first started this project, we're like, okay, that means we either need to convince people to live in small spaces, or we need to build high-rises in order to get to that 100 residents per acre. And so at Zappos, we've been around for 14 years, and with so much focus on company culture, we've thought a lot about how do we get employees to collide with each other serendipitously inside the office. And part of that is driven by density in the office. So in the US, average density is about 200 or 300 square feet of office space per employee. At our current offices, we're at 120 square feet per employee. And when we move, we're actually going to be at under 100 square feet per employee. And the reason why we're so focused on density inside the office, and I encourage those of you that are working in offices to really think about how closely your employees are sitting next to each other, is because the research has shown when you sit twice as far away from someone, you don't see them half as often. You see them half as often squared, so a quarter as often. And it's kind of like how the inverse square gravity law works. And the same type of concept applies in a city level. So we're really thinking about how do we get people to collide with each other in a relatively small space. And so at Zappos, we actually prioritize collisions over convenience. So where I sit in the building that I'm in, there's actually doors on all four walls of the building. And the previous tenant just they let their employees go in and out whichever door was most convenient. The parking lot's in the back. Well, we actually lock all the doors and force employees to go all the way around the building and into the front door. And even though it's a lot more inconvenient for our employees, the reason we do that is because it creates more collisions in the lobby area of our building. And you can see actually, I don't know if you can see in this light, but there's City Hall on the right, and there's a sky bridge. And then off of the, to the left is actually, off the photo is where the parking garage is. And the city used to let employees just, when they parked in the garage, they would cross the sky bridge and then go into the second floor of their building. Well, we're actually shutting down the sky bridge, forcing employees to actually go out onto the street and have more opportunities to collide with each other as well as with the community and the city, and then go back into the building and has the central plaza be the equivalent of a lobby for our future campus. So basically, the big bet is have all these different creative entrepreneurial groups colliding together in a very small space, and statistically, the magic will just happen on its own. And one of the things we realized from the research from co-working and what we've been doing over the last 14 years at Zappos and thinking about how do we get employees to have these serendipitous conversations with each other is that culture is to a company as community is to a city. It's the exact same concept, just at a different scale. So this is actually the building that I live in. It's called the Ogden, and it's right in the middle of this all, of the City Hall area and as well as the Fremont East area. And it's actually our best secret weapon. And there's 275 units in there. And between Zappos employees, downtown project employees, and employees of companies that we've invested in, we probably are renting or leasing out about half of those units. Well, 80 of those units, 80 of those bedrooms, we've actually set up as furnished apartments, essentially free hotel rooms, so that anytime we meet someone interesting, we just invite them to come and stay with us at the Ogden. So want to invite all of you, next time you're in Vegas, to stay with us at the Ogden. And it's been our best recruiting tool, because what we found out happens is people are basically tricked into going to the local coffee shop and the local bars and the local restaurants, and the place just kind of sells itself, and people end up over the period of 2 or 3 nights actually experiencing the very real sense of communities. And so, this conference is a great event. There's also conferences like TED and South by Southwest and so on. that are great conferences for two reasons. For a conference like TED, there's two reasons to go. One is because there's all this great content and people are talking about really interesting things, and anything from genetics to some other way of changing the world and so on. The other reason to go to a conference like TED or a conference like this is that you just run into really interesting people doing different things. And TED is this great annual conference. This is an annual conference. This was totally unintended, but what downtown Vegas has started to become, because of all these people staying at the Ogden, is it's basically like we're throwing a mini conference every single week now. And when people come, we just ask them, we kind of look through the list of who's staying with us for the week, and we ask some of them, hey, as long as you're in town, do you want to give a 20-minute talk about whatever you're passionate about? And 95% of people say yes. And so now, right now, we're actually doing it out of these construction trailers, and it's pretty cool. Some weeks there's 15, 20 talks going on, and it's just free to the community, and it's helping make the community gain new perspective and educating the community. And so we actually acquired a building at the corner of, having a little trouble seeing this, but at the corner of Las Vegas and Fremont, which is the most prominent intersection of all Las Vegas. You can see this is under construction, and rather than turn it into a bar or a club or a McDonald's, which we know could make a lot of money, we're actually building a speakers theater there called the Inspired Theater, and you can see some of the renderings, and this is opening up late summer or early fall. And around it will also be different co-working spaces and gathering spaces, collaboration spaces, and there'll be a rooftop bar as well. We used to have people come during that first Friday week because that's the Arts and Music Festival, but then we started seeing that we were sold out about 3 months ahead of time. And so we started theming each of the different weeks. And so now the first week of every month is First Friday week. The second week of every month is a tech-focused week. The third week of every month is a fashion-focused week. And the fourth week of every month we call Catalyst Week. And then Amanda, I'm going to ask to stand up real quick because she actually curates and runs Catalyst Week. So if you see her, be sure to talk to her about it. But it's think of it as basically like a younger version of TED. And we've had people like the producer of Batman come in and talk, and someone that figured out how to splice the genes from a firefly and a plant to do glow-in-the-dark plants. Oh, and Sean Stevenson has spoken at Catalyst Week. Yeah, so these amazing speakers, and it's a really fun event, and that runs Wednesday through Sunday. This is Stitch Factory, I think, which is our fashion incubator that we've opened up. And there's different sewing machines, and local designers come and get to use the sewing machines and equipment and so on. And right now we actually have Cirque du Soleil in there designing costumes for their latest show. And so as we started thinking about building this 100 residents per acre goal, we're like, okay, we have to build these high rises, which are going to be really expensive. How are we going to, even with the $350 million budget, that's not going to actually translate into that many apartment units. And start thinking about what is the value of a resident that is out and about in the community. So someone like me, I'm out and about in a collisional way 3 or 4 hours a day, whether it's on the streets or in a bar or a restaurant and so on, times 7 days a week. I travel a lot, so call it 40 weeks a year. Do the math, it works out to about 1,000 collisional hours a year. So this is a guy named Jake who actually just actually pretty amazing. He's with a company called Flint and Tinder, had the most successful fashion-related Kickstarter campaign at the time we met him. He had raised like $300,000 on Kickstarter to manufacture men's underwear in the U.S. He actually just broke a new record for Kickstarter. He just broke $1 million on Kickstarter for these hoodies that will last 10 years. And he hasn't even made a single one yet, but he's raised $1 million on Kickstarter. And we're like, we want you in downtown Vegas and helping all the other entrepreneurs out, and both on the manufacturing side and really telling us the secret of how to get $1 million on Kickstarter. And we said, do you want to move to downtown Vegas? And he said no, he couldn't because his significant other is on the East Coast, his factory's on the East Coast, and so on. And so we started telling him, well, there's this fashion-focused week we want to do. What if you come out during that 1 week every month? And he agreed to that. And so started doing the math on someone like Jake, a purposeful visitor, and he's come and given talks and mentored people and done office hours and so on. And he would be out and about 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 times a year. It actually works out to be 1,000 collisionable hours a year. And so now, in addition to getting people to move to downtown Vegas, we actually have this really new, cool concept that we've been calling subscribing to downtown Vegas, where people can actually help accelerate all the learning that's happening in downtown Vegas, even if they aren't actually residents there. And so we have people that are coming back regularly. Some are coming back once a month. Some only are coming back once a quarter. But it's really helping accelerate all the learning and innovation that's happening. So basically, going back to the formula, instead of 100 residents per acre, we're thinking actually we should think about 100,000 collisionable community hours per acre per year, which works out to 2.3 collisionable hours per square foot per year. I have no idea what that means, but I like to tell our real estate people just to freak them out. But it's actually gives a totally different way of looking at the types of small businesses we want to invest in, like what's going to result in more collisions on a per square foot level. And so by focusing on these 3 C's, collisions, community, and co-learning, what we want people to say about downtown Vegas, whether they're just visiting for the first time, or they're subscribing, or they're living there. Imagine like in that speakers theater, the Inspire Theater, if every Wednesday afternoon through Sunday afternoon, you can walk in any time and there's someone giving an interesting talk about something. What we want people to say about downtown Vegas is that downtown Vegas will make you smarter, which is probably the last thing anyone would expect to associate with Vegas. So between Downtown Project and Zappos, and there's Delivering Happiness is another company that was spun off of the book. There's this common theme of inspiration that runs through these different companies. And for the first time, actually, we just passed a threshold. I don't know if very many people know this, but in the past couple of years, we just passed a threshold in human history. For the first time, 50% of all humans now live in cities. And within our lifetime, it's actually going to become 75%. And so we see what we're doing with Downtown Project, Downtown Vegas, as being much bigger than just about Vegas. We want to share what works and doesn't work and hopefully help inspire and other communities and cities to revitalize and reinvent themselves. To us, it's kind of like the story of the 4-minute mile, where for the longest time, people thought it was impossible to break a 4-minute mile. Or they thought even if you could, you'd die as soon as you crossed the finish line. And then in 1954, this guy named Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. And the funny thing is, within a year, other people broke the 4-minute mile. And it wasn't that nutrition was better on Earth that year. It's just that people believed it was possible. And so we want downtown Vegas to be the 4-minute mile for the world. One of my favorite quotes, and this is how we've thought of things at Zappos, as over the years we went from just being a shoe company to being about customer service to being about company culture and now to being about community. My favorite quotes, and I think it was from an executive from one of the major ad agencies, said this: a great brand is a story that never stops unfolding. And I think the same is true for a company, same is true for a city, and same is true for a community. And that's why I am so excited about what the next several years are going to bring. I can't wait to see what unfolds. Thank you very much.